Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Zhou Yue. China is already an aging society, and it is estimated that more than 30% of China's population will be over 65 years old by 2050. Well, some experts say nursing home care is an inevitable trend for China over the next decade. Yet many Chinese are still reluctant to put their families and relatives in nursing homes. So why is this? What are the challenges and opportunities facing China in caring for its aging population? To talk about these and more, I'm pleased to be joined by Professor Linda Fried, Dean of the Mailman School of Public Health at Columbia University in the U.S., and Professor Du Peng, Director of Gerontology Institute at Renmin University of China. But before we get started, let's take a look at this.
The world's most populous nation, China, is aging fast. According to official data, by the end of 2015, China had more than 222 million people aged over 60, accounting for 16.1% of the country's entire population. And 1 in 4 Chinese will be over 60 by 2030, with some experts warning that China could be the first country in history to grow old before it grows rich. To ease the growing burden of pensions, the government is considering raising its retirement age. At present, people retire between 50 and 60 years of age, depending on circumstances. But a time frame has yet to be announced, and it's young Chinese who are most affected.
I think it's a serious problem. Our nation must consider it to prepare pensions for so many seniors. I'd like to retire at 60, but I know I can't. There's no other way.
A key cause of China's aging population was the one-child policy, following the baby boom in the 50s and 60s. Population expert Zheng Jinjin says China will now age faster than it will develop, a challenge no country has ever faced.
We have lowered the mortality and fertility before getting rich years ahead of economic development. However, I believe China has the ability to cope if we respond in time.
China has ended its one-child policy, allowing all married couples to have 2 children. But many young parents are not that enthusiastic about the policy. Professor Zheng says career pressure is causing would-be parents to hesitate.
I think nowadays the environment in the workplace is not so friendly to mothers. There are no facilities for childcare, and it's not so friendly for women to be excused from office hours to take care of their children. If we wish to have more children born, then the whole society, companies, and state need to create a child-friendly environment.
As China confronts an ever-growing population, it's likely further action will be needed to encourage more parents in the future.
Well, today's topic is how to deal with aging China. As far as we know, by the end of 2015, China has more than 220 million people aged over 60. And when we describe an aging society that is more than 10% of its population is over 60, that we say it is an aging population. And the problem is, it is estimated that actually more than 30% of China's population will probably be over 65 years old by the year 2050. How big a challenge is this? Let me start with you, Professor Du.
That means we will have almost 400 million pensioners. So how to develop a better social security system?
400 million pensioners.
By
That's more than the entire population of the U.S.
Yes.
Sure. It's almost the entire old population of the developed countries by that time. So it's the top one challenge. The second, I mean, it's a Medicare and long-term care system. With the oldest old people, they are growing in number and proportions, and how to provide better service, care for these people, including how to help the family members to support the old people at home. And the third is, with such a big number, how to enable them to participate in the social development. They are not just pensioners. They can contribute in the social development.
Professor Fried, what is the situation in the U.S.? Are you also facing a challenge of taking care of your elderlies? Are there any similarities and differences?
So there are tremendous similarities. In fact, every country in the world is aging. But we don't have a roadmap for this. As a human society, we've never in the history of the world have we added 30 years to human life expectancy before, even 20. So there's no real established right way to do this, but we do now know a lot from science about both how to provide better care that better matches needs and how we might all gain from these longer lives.
What is the American practices that you've seen accomplishment, and what are the challenges in your system?
So I think in the U.S. There are a number of layers that have been put in place and many more that we still need to do. Certainly the social protection systems of pension, the Medicare system for universal access to medical care are critical and highly successful, because prior to those, a large proportion of the American population that was older was living in poverty, and less than half had insurance for medical care. Now almost everybody does. Those are the first two. But now what we are working on is developing a geriatrically trained healthcare workforce, and slowly, not quickly enough,
From the private sector or the public?
Both.
Both.
Moving into developing a more integrated medical care delivery system that can provide both medical care and social care in an integrated way, and moving away from hospital care as much as possible into communities, into primary care, and even into home care.
And Professor Du, what is unique here in China? We don't have a similar pension system in the U.S. What about what Professor Fried mentioned, the integration of medical care and elderly care?
In fact, we have experiencing the same trend. In Chinese, we call that medical service and social service, how to integrate the medical and the social part. So about 5 years ago in Qingdao, in fact, they started to have a pilot program on medical long-term care insurance, including how to provide the service out of the hospitals, at the nursing homes, even at home, how to help them to get the care. And then since this year, the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security has started to pilot in 15 cities the integration of the medical service and the social service. So similar like in United States and in other Japan, Korea, to develop the long-term care systems.
With aging population, there is less people working and more people consuming. That's why there's proposal that we should postpone the retirement age. Now the retirement age in China is 60 for men and 55 for female white-collar workers. Do you think China needs to postpone retirement age like what the Europeans have been talking about?
I think so, because with longer life expectancy and healthier old people, and even with better education background for the current generation older people. For example, currently for the 220 million old people, 60 and over, 56% of them are age 60 to 69. That means pretty young for the aging population. And for the whole older population, entire older population, 83% of them regard themselves as healthy. So,
but are they still willing to continue to work, or they would rather retire?
That's another side of the story. That means comparing to the if you look at the labor force participation rate or the labor force, the size of the labor force, in fact, nowadays we have 70% labor force age population, still very big. But with population aging, we have a shrinking labor force. So to certain stage, we need to enable more people to work longer if they want. But currently, if you postpone the 50 to 55 for female workers, still many people, they think they don't want to do that, or maybe, so that means in the future, even we want to do that, it depends on whether they are willing to do that. The second is whether the employer want to employ them, and then they can realize the postponement of the
I presume, Professor Fried, America is not under such a huge pressure because you have a lot of immigrants coming over.
So the U.S. actually is very much struggling in the same way with this set of questions. I think one difference is that it's becoming increasingly clear in the U.S. that more older adults feel the need to stay working financially. And many who retired, perhaps early, are discovering that they want to stay engaged and that it's very important to their mental and psychological well-being to feel like they're contributing and doing things that are meaningful.
Are they still welcome in the job market?
So what's happening, I think, in response to both of those is that employers are also realizing that they need the human capital of older people, the lifetime of experience, their expertise, and there are large shifts going on by employers creating more flexible working conditions for older people who might not want to work full-time but would very much like to stay working. They also are creating new pathways to gradual retirement over a longer time. And there is no fixed retirement age anymore in the United States. And so
it depends on different companies and nations.
So legally there is no retirement age anymore. That was ended. And so it is up to the employer and the employee at what age people retire. There are some areas in which there still are fixed retirement ages, but in general those are gone. And what's happening is that there's steadily increasing numbers of older adults in the workforce. The other thing that's happening is that, and I've been very much involved in this, is that there's a realization that we don't have enough meaningful and impactful roles for older people who have a lot to contribute outside of the workforce.
What do you mean by outside of the workforce?
So, for example, in volunteering. So one example is a program I created many years ago to demonstrate that society needed older people, even outside of the paid workforce, and I created a program called Experience Corps, in which older adults volunteer without pay in public schools with the children to help improve the children's school success. It's very successful for the success of the children. The schools always feel better for having a large number of older adults there. The school climate is better. And we designed the program actually to improve the health. Hidden inside of the service program is a public health program to improve the health of the older volunteers. It's very successful, but it's a model for that kind of service.
But is this model have universal relevance? Because in China, it seems we still have more than 7 million graduates from colleges every year. They are trying to find jobs. They are competing for posts. Is it really necessary to keep the senior citizens working? Or we should, like Dr. Fried has been saying, let them be involved with volunteer services, be engaged in local communities and help local people have a better life?
Yeah, I think to encourage the older people to work longer, it's not just for the reason of the labor force shortage. In fact, they have more experience, they are better educated, so they can have more years to contribute to the societies. So
and let them be productive and contributing to society.
Productive. So in that way, if you want to realize that, that means we can create more age-friendly environment. So for the young couples, if you want to attract them to work here, you need to have a kindergarten, some services like that, so that they can focus on the work. But if you want to attract some senior workers, they have old people, old couple to take care, how to provide service like that, and more age-friendly environment, maybe not so hard environment. And then the law in United States is against the age. So for 65, you can have 100% pension, but you can't say you are 65, you must retire. It's not compulsory. So it's more flexible. That means both sides, employer, employee, they can select whether I want to work longer or whether I want to shift to another
And
job.
do you think that will be the case in China in, say, 5-10 years' time?
Yeah, in fact, in 2002, during the Madrid International Conference on Aging, China is also one part of that conference. We agreed to sign the declaration action plan. One article is about to aim to the flexible retirement age. So I think generally we are going to the same direction.
All right. We've been talking about aging society here in China and how should we cope with it. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Let's continue our discussion. In every society, there are different challenges and different cultures. For example, in China, because of our own tradition and culture and also social policies, for example, the one-child policy, which has resulted in a very unique family structure. That is two adults, spouse taking care of one kid, but they have four grandparents. That kind of a family structure, what does it mean for elderly care in the future, Professor Du? Because it seems that the Chinese still tend to take care of their parents and grandparents at home. Most of the responsibilities still fall on the shoulders of the children and grandchildren. But we don't have many children and grandchildren to take care of the elderlies.
I think the shrinking family size and more old people live separately from their children. That's the trend. Currently about maybe one child, maybe two children, the same. Almost 50% old people in China, they are living alone with the couple or maybe themselves. So that's really a huge challenge for their children, especially for the one-child families, because they really need to take care of the both sides, the old parents. But now for them, maybe it's just the beginning, maybe 10 years, 20 years later, that will be more severe.
But it
of the
seems
challenge.
there are still stigma associated with sending your parents or grandparents to a nursing home.
That's true.
And those elderlies don't feel comfortable going there, leaving their children behind.
That's true. So because in the first 4 decades in China, the nursing homes for those old people without children or dependent. So for many people, they think in the traditional way, if I have a child, they should take care of myself.
I should stay with my children.
Yeah. According to the current research, in fact, if you ask the old people in the big city, who initiate the idea to send the old people in the nursing homes, for the majority of them, they are the older person. They start to talk about that. So tell their children, so it's too heavy burden
So
for you.
you're saying the mindsets change happened among the elderlies.
At least the more older people, they propose that. That on the other side, that means their children are quite reluctant to send their old people, because the old people, they are living in the nursing homes, they don't know the comments of the neighbors. But for their children, if they send their parents to the nursing homes, they feel pressure of the neighbors on that. So that's the culture we need to change.
Professor Fried, what do you want to say to the Chinese experts and decision makers about how to cope with the unique cultural undertone of this?
Well, I think it's probably not for me to presume to know what a Chinese solution
would not be
would
sustainable because
right. But In some ways, the U.S. is trying to figure out related issues. So we really have not developed a satisfactory long-term care system either. I think globally, the World Health Organization has said that this is one of the challenges that the whole world needs to figure out. But there are very interesting experiments going on in the United States. Some of them have to do with seniors supporting other seniors in a formal way. So visiting programs, assistance programs, so that there are new kinds of systems being developed in that way. There are also new kinds of living arrangements being experimented with, what's called naturally occurring retirement communities in apartment buildings in New York City, where I live. Many people have lived there their whole adult lives, and suddenly the entire apartment building is filled with people in their 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s. And there are new structures where the residents of the building actually put in place services that support everybody.
Okay.
And they can age in their homes with support in that kind of a building. There are also other arrangements being developed by older people to develop communal living with friends. So lots of experiments going on to consider alternatives to nursing homes.
Do you think we will have similar systems and institutions down the road? Because we have seen some new phenomena in some local communities. Already they have provided services like that.
Yeah, that's true. Since 2011, in fact, the State Council announced the 5-year plan to develop the social care system nationally. One key indicator for the system is to have the home care and also community care and the nursing home care. And then there is a proportion for that. It's a 90-70-73. That means 90% at home, 7% get community service, and 3%.
Who decided this proportion, and will it change in the future?
That's it already changed the reality, you know. By last year, because we have the number 220 million old people. Now by that number multiplied by 3%, so we need to have more than 6 million buys. By the end of last year, we have a 6.6 million buys for the nursing homes. But that's only. But the nursing home is not the only choice for the solution. So, but the nursing home they can provide more professional care for the older people with functional disability, with dementia. They can get more professional care there. But now, as you said, so the majority of the cities and the rural areas, they are developing the community care centers for the older people to deliver the service. So in their neighborhood. So that's the most of the older people, they will benefit from that. Currently, it's just at the beginning to set up the facility. I think with maybe 2 or 3 years, with the new system set up, more and more older people, they can benefit from the service.
But in which area do you think the government and the society should invest more in? Is it nursing homes? Is it communal services, as you said, or home services with more medical care provided? Which is the right way?
Yeah, both sides, I think they need to develop. For nursing homes, we have more than 6 million buys, but almost 40% they are not occupied. That means you have the facility, but how to provide the good quality of care to attract the older people. So that's for nursing homes. And then for the community services, maybe we have the center, but we need to integrate, like United States, the medical service and social service in the center, so that the older people, they need care. Maybe something like the kindergarten, that's something like the daycare center for the older people. They can enjoy the service.
Another question is that, is the elderly care industry a business or social service? Should institutions and providers make money out of this? Should the government invest more into this? Who should take the bulk of funding?
I think that's for the silver market, the silver industry is a very huge market. But even for the huge market, for the government's role is to guarantee the basic needs, basic service of the old people. That means for some old persons, they need the care at their community, or maybe they need a bed at nursing home, and then the government can sponsor that. They can purchase some services for that.
By basic, you mean most of the elderly?
Yeah, I mean maybe it's not quite luxury, but that can meet their daily needs of these old people. So government should guarantee this part, but for the other part, some old people, they want to have one big room or in a very luxury communities. That should leave the space for the market. So it's not the government's role, but the government is still need to regulating the market to guarantee to protect the rights of these old people.
What is the American case in this regard? Is the government taking more responsibility, or is the private providers?
So I think this is an open question what it should be. So medical care in the United States is primarily provided by not-for-profit health providers, but not governmental. There is an underpinning of governmental care provision by the Public Health Service, but in general that's not where it resides. But these underpinnings are in fact similar to what Professor Du was saying in terms of assuring a basic need is met, that is a public good and a public utility.
And I think that will continue to be talked about as China has more aging population, more elderly people, how to allocate responsibility and resources to different sectors. What is the community's responsibility and government's responsibility and families' responsibilities? But which direction do you think it will be headed?
I think for the general system, I think for the country, the state need to develop the security system, so-called the social protection system. I think that's for one-child families or maybe even two-children families, the same. You can't depend on your children to provide long-term care in the future. So that's for the country, that's necessary. Even in the United States, the same experience. The second is how to support the families to take care of the old people, to enable these old people, even for themselves, to live as long as possible at their home.
As healthily, as independently as possible.
Yeah, either by support their family members, carers, or provide community services. That's the aim. And then for the market, that's to provide a variety of services at different levels to meet different needs of such a big number of old people.
So that's going to be more diversified and integrated services for the elder care. Thank you very much, Professor, and thank you, Professor Fried, for your analysis. And you've been watching Dialogue. I'm Zhou Yue on CCTV News. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.